Hey there everyone, AJ back again for the Mighty Gluestick channel. I make videos about Dungeons & Dragons lore full-time and have a collection of well over 600 videos on monster ecology, fantasy world history, character classes and magic items on my channel. If you like what I do, please consider becoming a member of the channel by clicking the join button down below or backing me on Patreon where you can get full access to all the scripts I write for these videos. Members of either also become members of the Secretive Gluminati on the Discord server that I run, and of course subscribing to me here as I upload at least twice a week and have a live stream every weekend. This is a bonus video though. A viewer suggested that I have a special leaping monster video in honor of the fact that this is a leap year. So today we're going to talk about the Grung. Grungs are little swamp-loving poisonous frog people who dwell in dense forest and particularly steamy jungles and rainforests. They need a source of water close to where they live and can be a real problem for other species that live in the same territory. They are like the bullywug and the gripply in that they live in small tribes, they build shelters, and they are able to craft and use weapons. The gripply are mostly good-hearted, timid, and aloof race of tree frog people who have a matriarchal society that worships an unnamed goddess. We'll actually discover the name of that goddess later on, and are quite suitable for making player characters from. While the Grung are generally lawful, evil, and quite hostile, and are certainly, there are exceptions to the norm, but that would be much like the renegade drow elves. There's also an option for making a Grung player character, and bullywug for that matter, but they're not official player character races, just optional extras. Very fun optional extras. Gripply are clearly modelled on tree frogs, bullywug are modelled on bullfrogs, and the Grung are modelled on poison arrow frogs, though in older editions of the game, the differences were not so stark and obvious. Grung have their origin back on the world of Earth for the Greyhawk setting. They appear in the original Greyhawk Adventures published in 1988 for AD&D 2nd edition. The Greyhawk Grung are highly territorial, toad-like humanoids that dwell in swamps and marshes. They bear a strong resemblance to frogs and other amphibians, and might in fact be evolved from them. This is the original form. Standing about 3 feet tall, Grung have a lower body that strongly resembles a giant frog or toad, with powerful legs and large webbed feet. Their upper body, however, is more developed, with muscular forelimbs, opposable thumbs, and a smaller, more humanoid-looking head. They stand upright, move with rapid, short hops. They are incapable of the prodigious leaps and jumps shown by frogs, toads, or bullywugs, although the Grung can leap 25 feet. However, with evolution has given them intelligence and tool-using forelimbs, it's taken away their prehensile tongue that frogs have for hunting. In its place, the Grung's wide mouth is full of sharp, carnivore's teeth. Grung are meat-eaters. Grung have the slick skin of other amphibians. Since they breathe through that skin in a way, they must keep it moist. The coloration of the Greyhawk Grung is like that of bullfrogs, dappled green and brown on their backs, shading to white or yellow on their bellies. Their eyes are red, with black pupils, and are protected by bony ridges. This makes the Greyhawk Grung very different in appearance and social structure to the Forgotten Realms Grung. The Forgotten Realms Grung are also more variable in size and have striking bold colours that determine their rank and role in their tribe, or their caste within the tribe. In Volo's Guide to Monsters, this is fully described for us, and I'll go into a bit more detail. So grab yourself a beverage, settle back, we're going to get deeply nerdy. Each caste lays eggs in a separate hatching pool. The juvenile Grungs join their caste upon emergence from the hatchery when their limbs have fully developed and their tails have shrunk down to nothing. All Grungs are a dull greenish-grey when they're born, but each individual takes on the colour of the caste as it grows to adulthood. This could be a natural process, or it could be the result of some sort of ritual magic, or even a religious ceremony. It's up to you. This gives wiggle room for more storylines, where a Grung tadpole born of another caste somehow becomes a higher caste colour, or something mystical and foretold by prophecy, like a rainbow Grung, destined to bring all Grung together in peace and harmony, and dire chaos and enslavement to other races. Or a demonic black Grung, with poison so strong it can kill any creature, a vital component of the legendary axe poison of godslaying. You can have a lot of fun with it. Green Grungs are the tribe's warriors, hunters, and labourers, and blue Grungs work as artisans and in other domestic roles, designing habitats, coming up with devilishly clever ambush techniques, preparing food, crafting pottery, weaving ropes and making bows and arrows, blowguns and napping flints, spearheads. Supervising and guiding both groups are the purple Grungs, who serve as administrators and commanders, or sub-commanders. All of these three castes are the basic Grungs who make up the basic Grung stat block. The Wildling Grung stat block is used for the red caste. These are the tribe's scholars and magic users, and thus are superior to purple, blue and green grungs and given proper respect and even some status by grungs of higher caste status. I personally would say that this is the caste where variant alignment is most likely, so in my opinion, red grung would be more commonly represented as player character grung, encountered far outside of their tribe's territory, and I think there is an implied tolerance in grung culture for the red grung being, well, weird, eccentric, gifted. Higher castes include orange grungs and the ruling gold grungs, who use the elite grung warrior stat block. A tribe sovereign is always a gold grung. The grung normally remains in its caste for life. On rare occasions, an individual that distinguishes itself with great deeds can earn an invitation to join a higher caste through a combination of herbal tonics and ritual magic. An elevated grung changes colour and it's inducted into the new caste in the same way that a juvenile of the caste would be, receiving the same sort of training from scratch. From then on, the grung and its progeny are members of the higher caste. This is way beyond the scope of ordinary biology if they actually breed true, and smells very much like the ancient manipulative science of the creator race called the Batrachi, who may be the life form that the Slat are based on, but that's another story for another day. That creator race is responsible on the world of Toril for creating many of the intelligent amphibian species, but they may have also travelled to other worlds and simply brought interesting intelligent amphibians species back to Toril with them, a practice of slavery that seems to have rubbed off on the grung. I've seen no mention of any particular religion for the grung in Forgotten Realms, but the Greyhawk grung worship a strange god named Wastre, well, a version of Wastre, who is certainly worth a mention as Wastre is so weird. I'll get to him in a couple of minutes at the end of this video. Forgotten Realms grungs live in trees and in huts and shelters, and prefer shade, but can have a wider environmental range because they maintain a hatchery and a few well-guarded pools at ground level. About 3 months after hatching, the grung tadpole takes on the shape of an adult and can fully leave the pond. It takes about another 6 months for the grung juvenile to reach full maturity and growth, and they're training for that entire time, but they're combat capable extremely rapidly. Males are slightly smaller than females, but both sexes are equally aggressive and dangerous. Because they are small, the grung prefer ambush to frontal assaults, and their favourite tactic is to lie concealed until the enemies, whether travellers or a group of rival grung from another tribe, have wandered into their encircled killing zone. They then open fire with short bows and spears. These attacks are particularly deadly among non-grung because the creatures invariably poison their arrowheads and spear tips and daggers. This poison is secreted by the grung's skin. Both the Greyhawk and Forgotten Realms grung are highly toxic and smear their skin poison on their weapon just before combat. In the Forgotten Realms grung, there is an option to have variant poison for the different castes of grung, which I highly encourage you to make full use of, and keep in mind that all grung are completely immune to all forms of poison, not just their own or another caste's skin toxins, so grung can live in some very toxic places, and may well be stolen away by mad wizards and otherworldly beings to stock crazy dungeons and exotic locations. Grung poison loses its potency 1 minute after being removed from the grung, or a similar breakdown occurs if the grung dies, so grung are safe to eat not long after being killed. They're pretty tasty, also I've heard. Their skin, while the grung is alive, is highly toxic. Any creature that grapples the grung or otherwise comes into direct skin-to-skin contact with the grung's skin must succeed on a DC 12 Constitution saving throw or become poisoned for 1 minute. A poisoned creature no longer in direct contact with the grung, so if they're grappled they can't do this, or if for whatever reason they're in contact with them, they can't repeat the saving throw until the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on itself in a success. When coated on a weapon, it adds a DC 12 poison that inflicts an additional 2d4 poison damage. It's a pretty vicious toxin. The green, blue, and purple grung typically use a dagger. It would be a knapped flint or an obsidian dagger. The higher castes also use bows, but absolutely include spears, blowguns, barbed nets, whips, caltrops, throwing spikes, blades, spiked clubs, and javelins if you so desire. Those are all quite within the grung's crafting manipulative capacity. Grungs typically don't use fire, and they don't smelt or work metal, so their daggers are probably going to be made from chipped stone or natural glass, or gems, jade, that sort of thing. A creature poisoned by a grung can suffer an additional effect that varies depending on the grung's skin colour. This is optional, but as I've said, I highly encourage you to use it. This effect lasts until the creature is no longer poisoned by the grung. For green grung poison, the poisoned creature can't move except to climb or make standing jumps. If the creature is flying, they can't take any actions or reactions unless it lands, so I would call this hopping poison. For blue Grung poison, the poisoned creature must shout or loudly otherwise make a loud noise at the start of or end of its turn. So, shouting poison. For the purple Grung poison, the poisoned creature feels a desperate need to soak itself in any liquid or mud. It can't take actions except to move towards or do so to reach a body of liquid or mud. So that's wet poison. For red Grung poison, the poisoned creature must use its action to eat food if it's within reach. So hungry poison. For orange Grung poison, the poisoned creature is frightened of its allies. So friend or foe poison. For gold Grung poison, the poisoned creature is charmed. I assume it's charmed by the poisoner? Or charmed in that it's charmed by Grung? It's a bit unclear. I would say charmed by Grung. And it can speak Grung, interestingly enough. For rainbow Grung poison, again, theoretical, the poisoned creature is incapable of any act of violence against any other Grung, can speak Grung, and becomes incapable of seeing another creature as equal to or worthy a true Grung. This poison can last for 2d4 hours, and its victims save against it with disadvantage. For theoretical deadly toxic black Grung poison, the poisoned creature must make a DC 20 Constitution saving throw or take 10d8 poison damage on a failed save, and they now gain the dying condition, regardless of their current hit point total. And they must make a death saving throw unless they can make a subsequent DC 20 Constitution saving throw at the start of their next turn. They will take another 10d8 poison damage if they fail that, and must continue to make their death saving throws. If they succeed on the Constitution save, they stop taking further damage, but they have to keep making those 3 death saves regardless. In this instance, the additional damage from the poison does not cause instant failure of those death saves. With the Constitution saves, as per usual, if the victim succeeds, they still take half the 10d8 poison damage. And to really drive home how extraordinarily toxic this substance is, it will affect creatures that are normally immune to poison. This is in no way official law. I just thought I'd provide something to scare the shit out of your players when you describe it, how toxic Grung can be. Like a legend of Grung toxin. While untreated Grung skin poison breaks down 1 minute after exposure to air, I see no reason why the Grung artisans could not have created a technology where they alchemically treat extracted poison and store it in little wood or bone pots, so Grung could make use of each other's direct toxins, their different types of toxins, and this could form the basis of a complex cultural tradition within their tribes, or even a form of currency. Again, not official law, just full of fun options. Now, although not mentioned in the Forgotten Realms Grung, the Greyhawk Grung certainly have teeth and can deliver a nasty bite equal to their dagger attack and also poisonous, but their saliva is less potent than their skin toxin, and victims make that Constitution saving throw with advantage. Grung die if their skin dries out. A Grung that fails to immerse itself in water for at least 1 hour during a day suffers 1 level of exhaustion at the end of that day. A Grung can recover from this exhaustion only through magic or by immersing itself in water for at least 1 hour. The water, also I should mention that that's actually much more lenient than the water dependency that Grung had in earlier editions of the game. So it could be a development that the Batrachi bred into the Forgotten Realms Grung. Who knows? The water around Grung settlements is tainted by their poisonous secretions, obviously. Any non-Grung drinking the water must make a DC 10 Constitution saving throw or become poisoned for 2d4 rounds, during which time they become lethargic and weak-willed, suffering disadvantage on all attacks and ability checks. The Grung have a lawful evil culture. They are warlike creatures, with a militantly rigid caste structure and tend to be extremely territorial in their hunting territory. They typically claim all territory within 1 mile of their tribal settlement as theirs. If there are other Grung tribes around, they will mark those territory with totem borders to ward off the other tribe members. Anyone unwise enough to enter this territory is a target for immediate attack. This is their hunting territory. Grung from other tribes are also fair game. Nasty little border wars between neighbouring tribes are the rule. Most encounters with Grung are with wandering warbands or hunting parties. Grung settlements are untidy collections of crude shelters, sometimes concealed inside large dead trees. Tribes number up to 100 individuals, with 25% of that number being juveniles who are fresh from the hatching ponds and being trained by the adults of their caste. Grung tribes are matriarchal. War chiefs are all female, and the tribal chieftain is the strongest fighter among the war chiefs. Subordinate females may challenge the chieftain at any time to take her position, and these challenges are always to the death. Each tribe also has a single female shaman of up to 3rd level of the Red caste. War chiefs, shamans, and the chieftain herself are identified by ornaments made from the bones of enemies. Within the tribe, males are dominated and have no say in any decisions. This is always the case in the Greyhawk Grung. There may be variation in the Forgotten Realms Grung. It's up to you and the lack of official law there. But yeah, this is certainly official in earlier editions of the game for other Grung on other worlds. Interestingly, though, that in the earlier editions, Grung are said to occasionally take live prisoners, particularly other Grung, which typically are the main course in a tribal feast, so they practice cannibalism. And while the Grung don't roast or boil their meals, perhaps they all vomit stomach acid onto the victim secured to a wide stone bowl and then collectively slurp up and tear off the sizzling chunks of the twitching and mewling victim, slowly being pre-digested alive. It's not official, it's just an interesting idea. Grung have their own language and can roughly understand the language of the Gripply and the Bullywug, particularly on Forgotten Realms, and the rudimentary signals of frogs and toads, but they can't speak to them. Most Grung have zero interest in learning how to speak Common. Other creatures are for eating, not for talking to. When no humanoids are around for feasting on, Grung hunt rodents of unusual size, other swamp-dwelling mammals, and occasionally snakes or lizards. They have very few natural predators, but many giant snakes are immune to Grung toxins and pose the greatest threat to them, other than other intelligent species who seek to exterminate the violent Grung and their poisoning of the waterways. In the Forgotten Realms, Grung are always on the lookout for creatures they can capture and enslave. Grungs use slaves for all manner of menial tasks, but mostly they just like bossing them around. Slaves are fed mildly poisoned food to keep them lethargic and compliant. A creature afflicted in this way over a long period of time becomes a shell of its former self and can be restored to normalcy only through magic. Now, I promised to talk about the Greyhawk Grung's unusual god Wastre, so shout out to 1D4chan for their wiki for gathering this information. You folks rock. Wastre is a minor deity of unknown origin to the greater public, and among humans is worshipped by slavers, certain monastic orders, and those who have a hatred of non-humans, so bigots. And it is he who preaches the ultimate superiority of mankind at the expense of humanoids and demi-humanoids. In religious depictions, Wastre is typically portrayed in a manner similar to his avatar form, the Hopping Prophet, a well-built, if not oddly proportioned, bald male that has somehow mutated to become both less and more than human. He has a hunched gait, bulging eyes, and splotched skin, in addition to a plethora of warts. Wastre dresses in shabby, party-coloured clothing of grey and dull yellow, wearing no armour, relying on his speed and evasive agility instead. He's unmistakable due to his batrachian features and odd gait, so he's got a horny, sort of pointed brow, wide head, jowls, that sort of thing. Repulsive being with an oddly croaking voice to match. Still, he can move quickly enough to hop for a considerable distance with ease and accuracy. The other avatar form of Wastre is that of a massive grey toad, well over 10 feet in length. This form has been referred to as the Grey Moor by any fortunate soul who was lucky enough to escape after seeing it. In either form, he can cast spells from any type of sphere, though he is highly unlikely to cast spells while he's rampaging as the Grey Moor giant toad. Although the origin of Wastre was shrouded in mystery and rumour, and for the most people it is, some things have come to light within the past decade. This information is only known to a privileged few, and was revealed by a high-ranking member of the secretive Scarlet Brotherhood. It seems Wastre was once a member of that now infamous and secretive organisation. Although not overly bright, Wastre lacked little ambition and discipline, and progressed through the ranks of the monastic order to assume some noteworthy status, but certainly nothing extraordinary. This changed when Wastre returned from an expedition to the vast swamp after several years' absence. Standing at the gates of Roturlep, he stood at the head of a large contingent of bullywugs, grung, and other batrachian creatures, in addition to some humans. Reading edicts from a thick tome of malign nature and mysterious origin, the physically mutated Wastre preached his now familiar dogma to the Brotherhood and finished by proclaiming himself the saviour and guide of not only the Sewell people, but of the whole human race. He then called upon the Father of Obedience of the Scarlet Brotherhood to step down and as head of the Brotherhood, and for all human citizens of Roturlep to join him or perish. The Father of Obedience realized the threat to the Brotherhood and that Wastre represented, and he acted quickly, proclaiming Wastre was a traitor and a heretic. He sentenced him and any who would join him to death. A clash between the Brotherhood and the forces of Wastre ensued, and the pitched battle raged in Roturlep and the surrounding areas for nearly a month. At the end, Wastre was forced off the Tilvanot highlands, and he and his followers, who then lived, descended into the depths of the vast swamp to establish a temple complex known as the Sacred Polystery, which was finished a few years later. Wastre is in the infancy of his divine status in the Greyhawk setting, having ascended to full demi-power status. It's known that Wastre was one of the 9 demi-powers imprisoned beneath the Tower of Magic by another fellow demi-power, Zagyig the Mad. Based upon what is known of this incident, it is speculated that when he was liberated through means unknown, only then did Wastre emerge as a true demi-power. Before this, it's assumed that Wastre was only a powerful mortal, or at most a quasi-deity. After his release, Wastre fled back to the vast swamp to reorganize his followers and began his plot of revenge against Zagyig. Of course, the fact that the Mad Archmage was partially responsible for Wastre's newfound power meant little to the Hammer of Demi-Humans, as he called himself. Someone would pay for his outrageous imprisonment, and over the years, the city that Zagyig built, the free city of Greyhawk, has suffered in his stead. Wastre has been active in the few decades since his emergence from the ruins of Castle Greyhawk. He's expanded his congregation and is worshipped by the Bullywugs as Wuggy, a bizarre frog god who encourages the Bullywugs' destructive behaviour. Wastre also serves as the chief deity of the monotheistic Grung in the form of Rabek, who was portrayed as a large female Grung, and Sujok among the Grippli, who is a small female frog-like deity. Other deities in the Grippli pantheon include the evil snake god Beltar and the spider goddess Lolth. It's important to note that these humanoids do not associate Wastre, the human deity, with their own deities. This would not sit well with the Grippli and the Bullywugs, and certainly the Grung. Wastre has no real allies, but in the short span of his demi-power he has made some powerful enemies. The heads of the demi-human pantheons all oppose Wastre, though collectively they don't consider him a serious threat to the survival of any of their demi-human races, in the Flan S at least. Wastre simply possesses neither power nor the resources to enact his agenda of genocide on a large scale. Among the human powers, Tritherion is the most active in opposing the doings and the tenets of the Hopping Prophet, and encourages his clergy to actively remove the presence of the clergy of Wastre through either coercion or force. Anyone remotely associated with Zagyig is subject to death in Wastre's cult, including all of the residents of the free city of Greyhawk. It's unknown whether Zagyig reciprocates this antipathy, but sentiment among the religious scholar holds that it's unlikely. Lastly, Wastre has a growing mutual antipathy with Beltar and especially Lolth. Wastre has no love for demi-humans, including those of the Underdark, and no respect for Lolth. The differences with Beltar may stem from the Seul Pantheon's division over law and chaos, and the relations between the two are also not helped by the fact that both powers tend to take affronts to themselves and their followers very personally. Wastre loathes the gods of all non-human races, from the Morden Saman of the dwarves to the Seldarine of the elves, and even the little pantheons of the halflings and the gnomes. Their dislike is entirely mutual. He's amicable towards other human deities, but he's likely less popular than Tharizdun at parties, and if Tharizdun shows up, the party is officially over. Except Zagyig, who once held him prisoner, who now thinks that the Bullywug deity Remnes, it's uncertain what the Bullywug's original deity has, what their relationship is. It's stated that he is worshipped by the Bullywugs as Wuggy, and suggesting a rivalry for control over the Toad people. But, amphibian gods aren't particularly up and go-getters. They're notoriously lazy. I don't see any particular reason why Wastre would leave Greyhawk and travel to another sphere, such as the Forgotten Realms, but hey, your game, your rules, and let the dice fall where they may. There is a supplement for the 5th edition called One Grung Above, which is where we get the player character stats for the Grung, a fun option, not for official organised play events, but playing a wickedly poisonous little jungle frog is a lot of fun, and although they do come from a vicious and militant culture, individual Grung don't have to be evil automatically. It just makes it much more likely that they'll turn out that way if they're raised and live within that society. Even a good-hearted Grung can still operate perfectly well in their own culture, something that a lot of folks tend not to wrap their head around these days in particular. And they like to make blanket statements about alignments, but these are individual cases. Alignment is a guideline to not just individual traits, but societal traits as well, and just because they may be opposing traits doesn't automatically make them violently opposed to each other. There are just more complexities in how these social systems accommodate different points of view. Also, this is really important to remember when dealing with intelligent species that are not human. They behave this way around each other, but they may present an entirely different kind of behavior around other intelligent species without impacting their personal alignment at all. Goblins certainly do not think of humans as good. Most Grung have no personal experience with elves and dwarves and humans and halflings, so they treat them like they treat a threat or a resource, not as thinking and equal beings, not until they get to know them. So from the perspectives of those races, Grung are murderous and evil in their behavior towards them. This doesn't mean the Grung are murderous and evil towards each other and their own tribe, and may not actually be of a murderous or evil alignment. You get me? If you like the lore in these videos, don't forget to check out videos by fellow Forgotten Realms lore masters. Check out my channels tab where I have a list of them for you to explore. Please hit the like button if you made it this far. Subscribe if you like what I do. Check out my Patreon for some exclusive content and all the full scripts for these videos. Buy some merchandise if they please you. Wear your geek with pride, and as always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.